Hi there. Today's book is in the series on military history, and it's Checkmate Berlin by Giles Milton. Now, Mr. Milton wrote a previous book we reviewed, The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, about the special devices used by SOE, etc. during World War II, which was a fascinating book. And his new book, Checkmate Berlin, covers a completely different subject. It's still related to World War II, more specifically the end of the war, but it's equally fascinating. And the book introduces us to some amazing characters with nicknames to match. For example, the American Colonel Frank Howlin' Mad Howley and the British Robert Looney Hind are two of the principal characters, who basically each of them had operational responsibility for their sectors in Berlin. The book actually starts with the revelation that during the first week of the Soviet occupation of Berlin, Churchill actually called upon his joint planning staff to prepare an option to attack the Soviet forces. He wanted it to be a ground, air and naval combined plan, and the idea was to take the fight to the Soviets. Even though previously he had praised the Soviets, for example at Yalta, and toasted them as friends, he quickly realized that they were the real enemy. But General Ismay pointed out that it was politically and diplomatically untenable, and the history wasn't changed at that time. One of the characteristics of the Soviet occupation of Germany and Berlin in particular was the mass rape of the female population of all ages, and also the looting. The looting, I hadn't realized until I read this book the scale of it, and it started at the very top with Marshal Zhukov taking trainloads of not just art treasures but all sorts of household equipment and technical devices, carpets, anything at all, back east. And this filtered down to all the Soviet troops engaged in this, even taking light switches off walls and so on. And the rape of the female population, which has been talked about before, it was heightened by the fact that the population of Berlin had swollen because a lot of people had fled from the east with the oncoming Soviet horde. They were terrified of them, and there was a tremendous population, particularly of females in Berlin, because of the war had sucked the menfolk into the fight. And it was a very, very shameful episode, and also a characteristic one. Another very interesting section in the book deals with the death of Hitler. Now, I think this will be something we'll address in a review of a particular book on dedicated to this subject, but suffice it to say that Hitler was killed in the bunker, or killed himself in the bunker, and the body's burned. Okay, now the Soviets quickly found this out and realized it. However, Stalin wanted to blame the Allies. He wanted to use it as a propaganda thing, and he quite openly said that Hitler and Bormann had both escaped and were being sheltered, actively sheltered by the Allies. Now, they had the skull and they wanted to verify the dental records, and Hitler's dentist had fled, but his assistant, who was Fraulein Häusermann, was picked up and for interrogation, and this terrified her because she'd already been raped twice, but they showed her the photographs and she quickly identified that it was the skull of Hitler. Now, because of Stalin's wish to use the propaganda, she was taken to Moscow and spent 6 years in solitary, and then without any charge, and then sentenced to 10 years, presumably for being a dental assistant. Anyway, in the event, you know, the Soviet secret police at that time, the NKVD, buried the Hitler remains under a car park in Magdeburg, where it laid for a long, long time, until more recent times when it was exhumed and subject to forensic examination. Another famous episode, Winston Churchill quickly lost office after the war, and Clement Attlee became Prime Minister. And Churchill made a famous speech in Fulton, Missouri, which is known as the Iron Curtain speech, where he warned about the Soviet menace. And it's now regarded as an iconic speech, and was had a lot of foresight. But at the time, most of the press condemned it as a catastrophic blunder, and the Labour Party tabled a motion deploring it, except for the Foreign Secretary, the Labour Foreign Secretary, Ernest Bevin, who himself realised the Soviet menace and was much more pragmatic about it. Then another big section of the book deals with the siege imposed by the Soviets when they tightened up the borders, and basically they wanted to starve the American, British and French sectors into submission and then just take over. And there were various proposals to break this siege. General Lucian Clay, the American general, wanted to use an armoured column to smash through and open the ground route into the city. But in the event, they decided on the famous Berlin Airlift, which was a fantastic landmark aviation operation. I've always been fascinated by the airlift, and I did quite a few courses in Frankfurt on the American base there, and the driving past the airport on the Autobahn, I noticed this memorial. It had World War II era aircraft, and there was a kind of an arc, or a part of an arc in concrete, and my host told me it was the memorial to the Berlin Airlift, and the other end of that arc is in Berlin at Tempelhof. And a couple of years later, I made it my business to fly into Tempelhof. Chose that route particularly. I wanted to have a look at it, and I went and photographed the, it's called the Luftbrücke Denkmal, outside Tempelhof. It's the other end, so they were the two ends of the airlift. Anyway, so the book goes on, and it goes into lots and lots of other interesting stories. I've just picked out a few of the topics. The author really evokes the atmosphere of wartime and post-war Berlin. It gives a great insight into the continuing mindset of the Russians and why they are still a threat. And I found it an absolutely absorbing read. I thought it was very well put together. He's a very good writer, very fluid writer, and as I said at the beginning, it's people with lots and lots of characters, such as Howling Mad Hawley, who, by the way, going back to the story of the rapes, there was gangs of Russian soldiers marauding across the city, and they would go into also the Allied zones, and Hawley got fed up with this and ordered his soldiers to open fire, which they did, and it started to have an effect of disincentivizing the rapists. So, great book, and recommend it.